Let's talk about a definition for animation and how that relates to hype. So, animating an element is about changing its properties over time to create the illusion of movement. So, let's just have a look at an example of that in hype. I've got this document open, Night of Terror working from your exercise files, and I'm going to click on the scene station. And I'm just going to get the playhead, which is this blue triangle over here, drag it back to the beginning. While we're at it, I'll just show you a couple of other ways of moving the playhead around. You can just click on the timeline to move it around. I'm just going to drag it right to 0 seconds and 0 frames. You can see that on the time display here. And I'm going to click this play button to play through the animation for this scene. And before I do that, I will just drag timeline down so you can see the full scene area. Okay. So there's several layers of elements here, and they're all playing different animations. Different properties are being manipulated in each element to create this illusion of movement. Now, let's just have a look at one element to see what it's actually doing. And I'm going to use this red gangster guy here to explain this in a bit more detail. What I'm going to do is, in the timeline, I'm just going to use my scroll wheel on my mouse to scroll up, and I'm going to hide all the layers except for Gangster 1. Let's just select it. We see it gets highlighted down here, and I'm going to click to hide all of the others, very similar to Photoshop. So another way to move the playhead is to scrub it. So you can click on this blue arrow and just move the playhead back and forth to scrub it back and forth to preview the animation. And if I open up my inspector window and I make sure I've got element inspector selected, you can see, just check out this opacity slider and watch how it changes over time. It goes from, the opacity of this selected element goes from 0% to 100% over 14 frames down here. How do I know it's 14 frames? I'm having a look at my time display. So let's just, in a little bit more detail, I'm just going to move up so I can see the properties timeline. And here you can see very clearly that only the opacity property is being manipulated, not any of these other ones. They don't have any animation in their timeline. And so from this keyframe at 1 second to this keyframe at 1 second, 14 frames, the opacity is being changed from 100%, from 0% to 100%, which gives us the effect of a fade in. Okay, I'll explain to you really easily how to create that animation yourself in the next screencast. I just want to show you one other thing. Let's hide the gangster, and I'm just going to show one of my text elements here. Yeah, this one here. Now it's not very well labeled, but it's this text that says, "of dealing with people who." I'm just going to rename that layer and call it text dealing so that I can find it easily in the future, and just get into the habit of naming your layers properly as you go, so you can easily find your elements and you don't get confused in hype. Now, text dealing is over here, and I'm just going to move this. I'm going to close the element window for the moment. You can see it has an animation overview, and which is these pink blocks. These pink blocks are the animation overview. That's because several properties can be animated at once in hype, but just to simplify things, you can adjust all of those properties at once using an animation overview. For instance, I'm going to make this animation, instead of going for 2.5 seconds, I'm going to make this animation a lot shorter by clicking and dragging on the side of it and shortening the animation so that it flies in a lot quicker. The other thing that's a little bit odd about this animation at the moment is, let's just play it, you'll see it does a kind of a bounce when it comes in. That's because the timing function, the animation timing function, which is indicated down here, is set to bounce. On these other ones, you'll find that the animation timing function is ease in out, which is the default for Hype. Let me just show this other piece of text. We have ways, which flies in like this. If I just drag out that animation for a bit longer, so it's going to be a bit clearer what's happening, you'll see it come in, accelerate in the middle, and then come to, so then sort of decelerate at the end. That's an ease in, out animation. So let's just play that through. So it's a bit subtle there, but it does accelerate in the middle of the animation. I'm going to drag that back to the speed it was. If you want to change the timing function of your animation, let's just show text dealing again and hide the We Have Ways text. It's very easy. You just click on the animation overview and you can change the quality of that animation here. I'm going to make this linear, so it comes in a completely even way. Starts and stops at an even speed. Okay, so that's a little bit about navigating around the timeline space and just a little bit more about what animation is and the various ways you can control the various properties that you will be controlling in Hype when you animate. Just one final thought on that is, if you open up the inspector and you're on the element inspector or the metrics inspector for your selected element, these are all properties that can be animated over time. The rotation, the width and height of the element, the opacity of the element, and then the color of the element, whether the element is blurred. All of these things can change over time to give you the effect you want in order to help tell your story through animation. So there it is, and let's move on to the next screencast where I'll show you how simple it is to animate in Hype.